What if I told you that one quiet girl in a tiny Pennsylvania village changed her entire town without money, without power, and without ever raising her voice? Not with a big speech, not with a viral video, not with a grand plan, just one small, brave step. In a world where everyone feels busy, distracted, and sometimes a little lonely, this story will remind you of something powerful. You don't have to be loud to make a difference. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be fearless. And you definitely don't have to be perfect. All it takes is courage the size of a whisper. Today, you're going to meet Emily, a shy 23-year-old library worker in a quiet American town where neighbors waved but didn't really talk, where people lived side by side but felt miles apart. She was ordinary, soft-spoken, afraid of speaking up. But one rainy afternoon, she read about a woman from history who walked through darkness with nothing but courage in her heart. And something inside Emily changed. She asked herself one question: what if I just try? What happened next slowly transformed her entire village. Lonely seniors found friends, struggling neighbors found support, and a quiet town found its heartbeat again. And here's the beautiful part. If Emily could do it, so can you. So before we begin, ask yourself, is there something small you've been afraid to start? A conversation? An idea? An invitation? Stay with me until the end of this story, because by the time it's over, you might just find the courage to take your own first step. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything. Emily Carter was 23 years old and lived in a quiet little village in Pennsylvania, where mornings smelled like fresh bread and wet grass. If you ever drove through Maple Hollow, you might miss it. One grocery store, one post office, one small church with white wooden steps, and rows of old brick houses with wide porches where neighbors still waved at each other. Emily worked at the village library. It wasn't a big library, just 2 rooms, tall wooden shelves, and a reading table by the window where sunlight poured in every afternoon. She loved that table. It felt like the heart of the town. But Emily had a quiet secret. She was afraid. Not of anything dramatic, not storms, not darkness. She was afraid of speaking up. Whenever there was a town meeting, she stayed silent. Whenever someone asked for volunteers, she looked down. Whenever she had an idea, she told herself, maybe someone else will do it better. She wasn't loud. She wasn't bold. She was kind. She was thoughtful. But she often felt small. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while organizing donated books, Emily found an old biography tucked behind a shelf. The cover was faded, but the title caught her attention. It was about Harriet Tubman. Emily had heard the name before in school, but that day something told her to sit down and read. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the library windows. The town felt still. She opened the book. Page after page, she read about courage, about small steps taken in darkness, about quiet strength that didn't need applause. Harriet Tubman hadn't been loud either. She had been determined. She had been brave not because she had no fear, but because she chose to move forward anyway. She closed the book slowly. Her heart felt warm. "Morning, Daniel," she replied. Her voice was softer than usual. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," she swallowed. "What would you think about a weekly community gathering here? Just neighbors meeting, sharing stories, helping each other?" Daniel blinked, then smiled wider. "I think that's a great idea." Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Yeah. People don't talk much anymore. We all just rush home. It'd be nice." She felt a tiny spark inside her chest. "Would you come?" "I'll bring the folding chairs," he laughed. That night, Emily made simple flyers, nothing fancy, just white paper and black ink. Maple Hollow Kindness Circle. Saturday, 5 p.m., Library Reading Room. Come share a story. Come share a smile. The next day, she walked around town handing them out. Her hands shook a little, but she didn't stop. Mrs. Thompson smiled when she received one. Mr. Daniels nodded slowly. Even Mrs. Green at the grocery store pinned one near the cash register. Saturday came faster than she expected. At 4:30 p.m., Emily stood alone in the library. Chairs were set in a circle. A small plate of cookies rested on the table. Sunlight glowed softly through the windows. Her heart pounded. What if no one comes? At 4:59 p.m., she almost moved the chairs back. Then the door creaked open. Daniel walked in carrying 2 extra chairs. "Told you I'd come," he grinned. She exhaled. At 5:02 p.m., Mrs. Thompson shuffled in carefully. At 5:05 p.m., Mr. Daniels followed. By 5:15 p.m., there were 9 people sitting in the circle. 9. It wasn't a crowd, but it was enough. Emily stood up slowly. Her hands trembled slightly. "Hi," she began. "Thank you for coming. I just thought maybe we could spend time together, share stories, help each other when we can." She paused. Silence filled the room. Then Mrs. Thompson spoke gently. "I haven't told stories in years," she said, "but I'd like to." And just like that, something shifted. Mrs. Thompson shared memories of her late husband building their porch swing. Mr. Daniels talked about learning to fish with his father. Daniel mentioned how he moved to Maple Hollow 5 years ago and still sometimes felt like an outsider. Emily listened. Really listened. The room felt warmer than before. At the end of the evening, Mr. Daniels cleared his throat. "My fence is falling apart," he admitted. "I've been meaning to fix it." Daniel immediately replied, "I can help Saturday morning." Mrs. Thompson added, "I'll bake pie." Everyone laughed softly. Emily felt tears press gently behind her eyes. This was it. Small, brave actions. The next weeks brought more gatherings, more stories, more laughter. The kindness circle became a habit. One evening, a young mother named Claire shared how she struggled balancing work and caring for her toddler. The next day, 3 neighbors offered to babysit once a week. Another evening, Daniel admitted business at the hardware store had slowed. Within days, villagers began choosing his store over driving to the city. Something simple was happening. People were seeing each other. One afternoon, Emily sat alone again at her reading table, sunlight warming her hands. Daniel walked in. "You did this," he said softly. She shook her head. "We did." He smiled. "You started it." She thought about that. She had started it. Not with a speech, not with a grand plan, just with one brave conversation. Weeks turned into months. Maple Hollow felt different. Neighbors waved longer, porches filled again in the evenings. Children played while adults talked. One day, Emily received a letter in the mail. It was from the county office. They had heard about the Kindness Circle and wanted to feature Maple Hollow in a community newsletter. Her hands trembled as she read it. Would you be willing to share how it began? That night at the gathering, she told everyone. The room erupted in gentle applause. Mrs. Thompson squeezed her hand. "You gave this town its heartbeat back," she whispered. Emily's voice was steady when she answered. "No," she said softly. "We just reminded each other that we belong." Later that evening, after everyone left, Emily stayed behind to tidy up. She looked around the quiet library. The same shelves, the same window, the same reading table. But she felt different. She no longer felt small. She remembered something she had underlined in the Harriet Tubman book. Every great journey begins with one step. Emily smiled. She had taken hers. And because she had, others found the courage to take theirs too. The following spring, Maple Hollow organized its first Community Day in the park. There were handmade banners, a lemonade stand, a small stage for music. Daniel built wooden booths. Mrs. Thompson baked pies. Mr. Daniels taught kids how to cast fishing lines safely by the pond. Emily stood near the center of it all, watching children run through bright green grass. Daniel approached her with 2 cups of lemonade. "You look happy," he said. "I am," she replied. He hesitated. "You know, I used to think courage meant doing something big, something dramatic." She nodded. "But now I think it just means showing up," he added. Emily looked around at her village. "Yes," she said gently, "showing up." As the sun began to set, golden light washed over Maple Hollow. Laughter echoed across the park. Neighbors hugged goodbye. Emily felt something settle peacefully in her heart. She wasn't the shy girl who avoided speaking anymore. She was still gentle, still soft-spoken, but now she knew something important. Bravery doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it looks like printing flyers, or inviting one neighbor, or saying, "Can I ask you something?" And when one person chooses courage, others feel it too. That night, Emily walked home under a sky full of quiet stars. Maple Hollow was still small, still simple, but it was alive. And as she stepped onto her porch, she knew the true lesson she had learned. You don't have to be loud to lead. You don't have to be fearless to be brave. And you don't have to change the whole world at once. Just take one small, brave step. Someone else will follow, and together you can light up an entire town.